We are at the top of the hour. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Nelson Garcia. I am the founder and president of the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group. Co-hosting our event this afternoon is the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C. With us representing the organization is Andrew Del Fuso, the vice president of the WTC of the District of Columbia. And he will be making some welcoming remarks here in a few minutes. We are just now monitoring the people who are coming online, so we're still seeing some numbers adding up. So we'll just hold off a little bit more before we begin. I guess in a nutshell, let me go ahead and start by introducing what the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group is all about before I hand it over to Andrew. For those of you who don't know, WIPG was created in 2009 as a means of working with the ambassadors and other members of the diplomatic community. We've expanded that to include members of Congress who were recently elected to the U.S. Congress, in the hopes of allowing them to get introduced to some key policymakers from both the public and private sector, and allow them to begin expanding their network here in the DC area. Many of these great ambassadors and members of Congress are only here for a certain amount of time, and therefore we are hopeful to initiate their contacts as soon as possible so that they can get their work up and running. We have been existing since 2009. We normally have live events at the Ronald Reagan Building and International Center, but obviously due to the pandemic situation, we are currently doing virtual webinars, and we will continue to do so until we have been given the clearance by respective governmental entities to proceed with live events again. Just a few housekeeping notes. For those of you who are online, you may wish to close any unnecessary browsers that you may have open right now in order to make sure that you have an uninterrupted stream of the presentation. I have been told that some households may have limits on their Wi-Fi capabilities, so if other members of your family is currently using Wi-Fi, you may wish to ask them to close it for a while, at least for the next hour, so that you're able to view this uninterrupted. Obviously, if you don't mind turning off any phones while the presentation is going on. And finally, we will have a Q&A session. We will try to get to your Q&A as much as we can. There is on the bottom part of your screen, there is a link where it says Q&A. Go ahead and type in your question and we will try to get to them on a first come, first served basis before time is concluded at the top of the hour. And with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce my dear friend, the Vice President of the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C., Andrew Del Fuso.
Well, thank you so much, Nelson. Nice to see you today. Welcome to our viewers. The World Trade Center Washington, D.C. is the programming arm of the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. For those of you that don't know, we host policy forums, we host trade missions, business briefings, and trade shows. When COVID hit us in mid-March, we embarked on a Messages of Hope campaign, where we facilitated messages from 48 embassies to the people of the U.S. with uplifting and inspirational messages. We hope that our viewers will take some time to visit our YouTube page to see these diplomatic messages that so far have been viewed by thousands and thousands of individuals. Our website is rrbitc.com. I'm very pleased once again to partner with the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group, or WIPG. For the past 3 years, we've worked together to bring in members of Congress and ambassadors to the Ronald Reagan Building for intimate and candid discussions on economics, tourism, travel, trade, and more. The Reagan Building is located in the heart of Washington, D.C., and it's run by a public-private partnership between Trade Center Management Associates and the U.S. General Services Administration. Now I'd like to turn the program back to my friend Nelson to introduce our esteemed guest today, His Excellency, the Ambassador from Thailand.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And we are extremely honored to have as our first ambassador for our virtual trade program webinar, His Excellency Thani Thongphakdi, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Thailand to the United States of America. By way of introduction, prior to his appointment, he was Deputy Permanent Secretary for Foreign Affairs from 2017 to 2019. Before that, he was Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Thailand to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva from 2012 to 2017. He is a career Foreign Service officer, having joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1987. His Excellency has represented the Kingdom in many international meetings. During 2014 to 2015, he was elected co-chair of the Open-Ended Intergovernmental Preparatory Committee for the third United Nations World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, as well as co-chair of the World Conference's main committee. He also chaired the Open-Ended Working Group on taking forward multilateral nuclear disarmament negotiations in 2016. Prior to his posting in Geneva, His Excellency was Director General of the Department of Information and spokesman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, having been Deputy Director General and Deputy Spokesman before that. He has also served as Chief of Staff to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Director for North America, Head of the Policy and Planning Division, Policy Section, and Liaison Officer and Assistant Permanent Representative of Thailand to UNESCO in Bangkok. During 2001 to 2004, he was posted to Washington, D.C. as counselor and administered counselor responsible for political and economic affairs. From 1995 to 2000, His Excellency was seconded to the Secretariat of the Prime Minister, working as Foreign Affairs Coordinator and speechwriter for the Prime Minister. In recognition of his services, His Excellency has been bestowed the Knight Grand Cordy, second class, of the Most Noble Order of the Crown of Thailand, and the Knight Grand Cross First Class of the Most Exalted Order of the White Elephant. His Excellency is a graduate of the Australian National University in Canberra, where he received a combined Bachelor of Economics and Bachelor of Science in 1985. He continued his studies at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., receiving a Master's of Science in Foreign Service with honors in international business diplomacy in 1987. And with that, I gladly introduce our guest speaker, His Excellency Thani Thongphakdi.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Andrew, for your warm welcome, and to Nelson for your kind introduction. It's certainly a pleasure to meet all of you virtually today, despite the good weather we're having in Washington now. And before I begin, let me also commend and thank the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group and the World Trade Center in Washington, D.C. for all your role in promoting closer ties between members of the diplomatic corps and with leading U.S. businesses in the United States. I've been asked to address a number of topics this afternoon, from COVID-19 to Thai-U.S. Economic relations. So I thought I'll start with the coronavirus situation in Thailand. The first case of coronavirus in Thailand was actually reported back in January, on January the 13th, in fact. It was a case of someone who had come from Wuhan, China. And it developed from there. We regrettably had our first reported death on March the 1st. And given the many travel between Thailand and other countries in the region, including China, as you know, we have around 40 million tourists every year. People expected the virus to spread quickly, but thankfully this did not materialize. I had checked this morning, and in fact, the total number of confirmed cases in Thailand as of now is just over 3,200, 3,232 in fact, with around 78 of them are still receiving treatment, and the rest have been released, but with 58 deaths so far. Importantly, there has been no local transmission over the past 50 days. There have been some new cases, but these were imported cases for people Thais who returned from abroad and the few foreigners who entered into the country. I think Thailand has been a case study for many people, and it has been said that we have been pretty much able to contain the pandemic because we had instituted very strong public health measures very earlier on, including declaring a state of emergency and instituting a night curfew, which has since been lifted. But I think importantly, what played a major factor was that in early April, we had suspended all international commercial flights into the country, with only a few exceptions for returning Thais. And of course, to stay ahead of the curve, what we tried to do was try to detect cases very early with intensive case investigations, sending in medical teams as soon as possible to identify and trace contacts of infected people, asking them to self-monitor and to self-quarantine. The use of masks has also been almost more than 90%. And I think people in the country and many countries in Asia, in fact, are accustomed to using masks when they're not well. So we see very good cooperation with people using masks, as well as using alcohol gel to maintain their good personal hygiene. With the US, in fact, we have been working with the CDC, which in fact has an office in Thailand for the past 40 years. In fact, the CDC's office in Thailand is the biggest outside the United States. And we've been working on a vaccine with the University of Pennsylvania here in the US. Human trials, in fact, are expected to begin as early as September. And if successful, we should have a vaccine by the middle of next year. But while we have been relatively successful in limiting the spread of COVID-19, of course, the social and economic costs have been high. During the first 4 months of this year, exports rose by only 1.2% year on year to just over $81 billion. But exports for the whole year, we expect to fall or contract by up to 10%. This is particularly a challenge for Thailand because our economy is so well integrated into the global economy, both in terms of trade and services, particularly tourism. And as a consequence, the Bank of Thailand expects our GDP this year to contract by as much as 8.1%. The social cost I mentioned has been high. Unemployment, which is normally only around 0.7%. Some think tanks anticipate this to rise up to 25%, or up to 10 million jobs lost out of our normal workforce of 40 million people if the situation does not turn around soon. The government, of course, has been working hard to try to help stimulate the economy, much like the US government here. We have already approved a 3-phase economic package, altogether amounting to over 10% of our GDP. Phase 1 began in early March, focusing on strengthening the country's financial foundations, addressing monetary, fiscal, and capital markets. The second phase, also in late March, provided assistance directly to employers, employees. And the third phase in April, which stressed providing financial assistance to commercial banks, SMEs, households, temporary workers, as well as the financial sector. At the moment, we have started reopening. We have started easing measures that have been instituted by what we call the 3 R's, the R's, 3 R's, like my minister likes to say. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But the first one is how to restart the economic activity safely. The second one is how to reboot in a way that we can conduct business in a sustainable manner for the future. And the third one, of course, is how to reconnect to the disrupted global value supply chain. If all goes well, we anticipate that with all the stimulus packages and measures, we should expect growth to rebound to maybe 3 to 4% next year. So that's pretty much the situation regarding coronavirus in Thailand. In summary, I guess you can say that we have been able to contain it, and we're cautiously reopening the country, and hopefully we will be back in a stronger position next year. If you look at turning now to Thai-US relations, you may know that Thailand was the first country in Asia that the United States had signed a treaty of amity and commerce with, and that was back in 1833. So this year, in fact, we'll be celebrating our 187th year. And we have always had very close relations, security-wise, economic-wise. And in fact, the United States has always ranked among the top 3 trading partners for Thailand. When I was here at the embassy 20 years ago, you, of course, were our largest trading partner. Now you're around number 3. But last year, our two-way trade did increase. It was just under $47 billion. It rose by about almost 6% from the year before. Thailand is your 2nd largest goods trading partner, your 25th largest export market, and your 16th largest goods supplier. In the first quarter of this year, our two-way trade continued to expand by just under 4%. with the US exporting around 7 billion in goods to Thailand and importing around 12 billion. Of course, we have a surplus with you, as many other countries do in Asia. And that, of course, has been one of the sources of friction, if you will, between us, because as you know, the administration has been very focused on what they can do to bring down the US trade deficit. And Thailand has always enjoyed a trade surplus with the United States of around, according to our figures, of around 14 billion US dollars annually. According to your figures, around close to 20 billion US dollars. So this is something that we're focused on, and from our perspective, we're always exploring what more we can buy from the United States, from energy to aircrafts to defense articles. And certainly, I'm sure that your businesses would have much more opportunities going forward to see what more we can do to increase our volume of trade. But on a related note, in terms of trade challenges between us, has been the issue of what the Treasury Department calls their report to Congress on macroeconomic and foreign exchange policies of major trading partners, which came out in January. As you know, the report itself is geared towards dismantling unfair trade barriers to trade and achieving more free and more reciprocal trade, including combating unfair currency practices that facilitate competitive advantage. In the report, Thailand was mentioned as a country close to triggering the key thresholds, which once triggered could lead to certain penalties. At the moment, we have not yet triggered them, but it's something that we are focused on. We have been in close discussion with the Treasury Department. We have told them, of course, that although we do intervene on the foreign exchange market, but it's not to gain an unfair trade advantage, but to smooth extreme market volatility, which can threaten the economy. And indeed, if you look at the direction of the Thai baht in recent years, it has actually been one of the best performing currencies in the region, which in fact makes our exporters none too happy. And another issue which has cropped up, not too seriously, but something which we are following, and I'm sure people here are following, is that of the digital services tax. Last month, the cabinet has approved draft legislation amending the Thai revenue code to enable the collection of a value-added tax of 7%, which is the same throughout the country, on foreign digital platform providers and sales of digital products and e-services. This is aimed at creating a level playing field and to ensure that value-added tax is fairly collected from all who do business and all who create revenue in Thailand. This tax is not discriminatory. It is a value-added tax which is applied to all businesses across the board in Thailand. Another trade issue that we're also following closely is that of the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP, which, as you know, will expire at the end of this year. So we're following the reauthorization of it very closely. Thailand is a major manufacturer with around maybe $4.4 billion of our exports coming under or benefiting from the GSP. And here we certainly thank our partners here in the US and US businesses who support us in continuing to receive GSP. In terms of investment, the United States is one of the largest investors in Thailand, with cumulative investments, both direct and portfolio, of over 50 billion US dollars, mostly in manufacturing, wholesale trade, professional, scientific, and technical services. More than 600 US companies are present in Thailand and benefit from the Treaty of Amity and economic relations between us, which was signed in 1966. Around over 90% of US investors take advantage of the treaty, which permits US companies to own up to 100% of a company or branch office in Thailand. The treaty also provides US companies with national treatment, allowing them to engage in business on the same basis as Thai companies, accepting them from most of the restrictions of foreign investment imposed by a Foreign Business Act back in 1999. At the same time, Thai investments in the US has also been growing. It stands now at around $7 billion, contributing to around 70,000 jobs in over 25 states across the country here in such areas as energy, agriculture, retail, and real estate. So we're looking at, we're always looking at new opportunities to invest in the United States. Many Thai companies are setting up shop here, are looking at potential ventures here, and we very much hope that new ventures will be announced next year, which I think many of them are very, very important ones, which will bring more investments, maybe up to $5-6 billion US. So we very much hope that the COVID-19 situation does not derail these projects, which have been under discussion for some time. Looking ahead, Thailand continues to try to uplift our economy. We very much want to move up the value-added curve, and here we very, very much welcome working with US companies who are leaders in terms of innovation and in terms of digital in the economy. As you may know, one of our flagship projects has been the Eastern Economic Corridor, or EEC, in the 3 provinces in eastern Thailand, in Chachoengsao Province, Chonburi Province, and Rayong. This is an area-based management project at the heart of what we call Thailand 4.0 initiative to make the country more value-based and more innovation-driven. And we have targeted 12 key industries under this project. They are more high-tech industries, more innovative ones, such as new generation automotive, smart electronics, medical and wellness, tourism, agriculture, biotechnology, food for the future, robotics, aviation, biofuels, biochemicals, digital economy, and medical hubs, for example. At the same time, we're also working to see what we can do to make Thailand more of a hub for education, as a center for excellence, center for human resources development. And here we've been working with American educational institutions such as Carnegie Mellon, where they open a campus in Thailand to help train or upskill our workforce going to the future. One of our priorities, of course, I alluded to earlier, is that of the digital economy. And here, this is where the Thai economy has been rapidly advancing. We are ranked first in ASEAN on many targets or many indicators. We're first on mobile banking penetration worldwide, in fact. We're 5th on e-commerce usage among internet users at around 85%. And we're 8th on the social media penetration at around 74%. Our 5G is also advancing on schedule. We had our first 5G license auction this past February, and the commercial usage is expected to come on stream next year. All of this highlights what we have achieved and what we want to do to help transform Thailand into a digital economy. And central to this, of course, is a project we call a Digital Valley, I guess modeled out after your Silicon Valley, is to promote partnership between government, businesses, and academia. And we hope that the Digital Valley will provide a platform will provide an ecosystem and platform for global startups, offering opportunities in such fields as data centers, cloud services, innovation design, product development centers, and training. Earlier this year, our Minister for Digital Economy visited California and Washington State, having meetings with many businesses there to see what more we can do with such companies as Google and Microsoft and the like, to see what more we can do in terms of promoting the digital economy in Thailand and in the region. And another priority for us, which is of interest for US businesses, is that of what we call the Bio-Circular Green Economic Model, BCG. This very much focuses on what we can do to strengthen the country's capacity in terms of biodiversity, combining that with advanced technologies and innovation to create more value. But by circular, we hope to develop the highest value out of our natural resources while minimizing waste. By green, we hope to mitigate global environmental issues. And through this model, we will be able to use resources more efficiently, produce minimal waste, and reduce impact on the economy. And of course, given the the progress and advancement of US companies. And in this regard, I think this offers many opportunities for us to work together. Another area we've been working with US companies also is that of smart cities. We are developing smart cities in major provinces throughout the country. And the idea, of course, is to upgrade the people's quality of life through 7 key platforms, namely transport, education, security, ease of doing business, public services, green and safe energy, and balanced management of our natural resources and the environment. Again, this offers tremendous opportunities for US businesses to increase their business activities and invest in Thailand. When I talk about Thailand, of course, I also encourage people to look beyond Thailand, look at Southeast Asia as a whole, and in particular, look at the Mekong sub-region or the mainland Southeast Asia, which is now the key engine of growth in the region. This is an important area that Thailand and the rest of ASEAN are helping to develop to reduce this level of disparity, if you will, between ASEAN member states and to promote sustainable development. Developing the Mekong sub-region is also an important response to the region's shifting geopolitical landscape. Thailand has been convincing our friends, including the United States and many other regional organizations and partners, to do more to promote the economic well-being and to provide countries in the region with a wider range of funding and development alternatives that respond to their needs. Accordingly, we have been actively driving what we call ACMEX. It's the homegrown sub-regional framework consisting of Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. And we are pleased that the United States is the first country to sign up as an ACMEX development partner, and we'll consider ways to link up ACMEX with your Lower Mekong initiative. And here we would very much welcome your increased participation in the Mekong sub-region, particularly in 3 key areas that we have highlighted. One is on the digital and energy connectivity. Second is on human resources development, and the third is on water resources development. So that in a snap is a quick, broad overview of what's happening in Thailand at the moment, what we hope to achieve moving forward economically to achieve further development and sustainable growth, as well as what we hope will be the future direction of the country in terms of more innovation and how to upgrade the country's economic productivity and level of growth, as well as how we view the region as a whole. I therefore encourage all of you to explore the opportunities that exist and hope that you will increase your presence or come to see Thailand when the country opens up to see what more we can do together. Let me end there, and I would certainly be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your fantastic presentation on Thai-American trade relations in the age of pandemics. We share your view that we hope that in the future, in the short future, immediate future, we can get back to normal as soon as possible. Just again, as a reminder for those folks who have joined us after we began our program, there is a Q&A link at the bottom of your computer. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask your question. We will try to get them as much as we can on a first come, first served basis. But if not, we will provide you with an email, a contact person in the embassy who can hopefully follow up with you down the road to help answer your question. I'll start off, Your Excellency, with the obvious trade tensions between the United States and China that is having repercussions, frankly, around the world, but I'm sure more immediately in the region, especially among ASEAN members and that part of the world. What has been the impact with Thailand specifically with the various exchange of sanctions between the 2 countries, and whether or not you have seen some movement among companies, specifically American companies that are looking to leave China and possibly establishing offices or manufacturing plants in the region. You see some of that beginning to play out in Thailand.
Thank you for that question. Certainly, we've been following very closely and with concern the rising tensions between the United States and China. As you know, for Thailand, China is one of our largest trading partners. In fact, it's our largest trading partner at the moment. At the same time, if you look at Southeast Asia as a whole, China is also ASEAN's largest trading partner. At the same time, I think if you look at it as a single country, China is also the United States' largest single trading partner as well. So both the United States and China are very important for Thailand and for Southeast Asia as a whole. And we certainly hope that the trade tensions will not be disruptive. What we have seen, of course, is that given the trade tensions over the past few years, is that a number of companies have been looking at countries in Southeast Asia and Thailand to see where they can shift their supply chains, if you will. And in the recent past, of course, there's been more expressions of interest to move their production factories activities to Thailand and to other countries in Southeast Asia. We're continuing to see this, and the government is well aware of this, and in fact we are trying to do what we can to facilitate this as well by offering incentives and other packages to ensure that the transition, if you will, into Thailand is made as efficiently and as productively as possible. So we are seeing that, but I think generally speaking, we would hope that the trade tensions between the U.S. and China, at the end of the day, will be resolved, because I think the economies are so well integrated and so interdependent that we would have to ensure that there is no decoupling, if you will, in the economies, and that the economies of Thailand, the economies of Southeast Asia will continue to be very dependent upon both the Chinese market and the U.S. market.
Thank you, Excellency. Andrew, I'll go ahead and ask you the next question for you.
You mentioned some large industry sectors where the U.S. and Thailand are doing quite a bit of trade, aircraft, for example, and tech. But what are some of the ways that small and mid-sized U.S. companies can find buyers and trading partners in Thailand in the age of COVID?
There are many industries where of course, okay, certainly there are large companies who are doing business in Thailand, and we're looking to see what more we can do. But in terms of SMEs, there are also a lot of business opportunities. I think the health industry, health technology is one which is growing in the country, is something that we want very much to promote, and particularly given the coronavirus situation at the moment. Production, for example, of PPEs and other products which will help or contribute to the fight against coronavirus will become increasingly important. Many of these companies are already based in Thailand, and we're seeing what more we can do in terms of health industries. The other industries which offer opportunities include in the digital industry, startups. Like I mentioned, that we are trying to promote the Digital Valley, which will offer opportunities for even small startups to come and make use of the facilities we have in our Digital Valley, working with academia and the private public sector. So I think there are many opportunities, not only for big businesses, but for SMEs in the country.
Thank you. Nelson, next question.
Okay, coming from one of our members, from Mr. Ronald Taylor. He mentions the fact that Dr. Anthony Fauci, based on his presentation to students, I believe it was in Georgetown University, that basically stated that even following the necessary protocols for a vaccine, it would not be available until January of 2021. And so the question is, how does this projection of not having a vaccine until as early as January 2021 impact the fact that you also mentioned, Excellency, that Thailand was working on vaccine protocols of its own. How do you expect the Thai people to adjust to that idea of not having a vaccine available until early next year, and how are they adapting? And at the same time, I'm assuming that has an impact on Thai-American trade for the time being until a vaccine comes out in the future.
The vaccine, of course, I think even with the best estimate, something might come available towards the middle of next year at the earliest. Now, in terms of Thailand, the local transmission has been negligible at the moment. For the past 50 days, there has been no local transmission. So even without a vaccine, what we're more concerned about is the importation of cases into the country. And that's why we have been very cautious in opening up the country. But the main effect of that is not upon manufacturing, but upon the tourism industry. I mentioned that Thailand normally welcomes maybe 40 million tourists a year. This year, we expect a significant drop, maybe a drop of 80% to only around 8 million tourists this year. So in terms of the economy, tourism probably contributes to around 40% of GDP. So from my perspective, the main effect of not having a vaccine would probably be tourism. But in terms of manufacturing, I think that will continue, because even during the pandemic at its height in Thailand during March, April, May, factories were continuing to operate. Despite the curfew and despite everything else, these factories continued to produce and to export. But of course, they had been affected by the demand which fell abroad. But in terms of production, I think that will continue. Now, without a vaccine, and if we continue to open the economy, open up the country, what we're looking at is looking at maybe having special bilateral agreements with certain countries where there could be freer flow of people if those countries also have little or no transmission of coronavirus. So we're looking at what we can do with certain countries to see whether we can ease restrictions on a bilateral basis and then build upon that. So I guess my answer would be that without a vaccine, the main sector that would be affected would be tourism. But in terms of manufacturing, we hope that this sector will continue to work and exports to continue. But of course, it has been affected by falling demand abroad.
Our next question is from Sylvia Delafield. Sylvia asks if there'll be any virtual trade missions or virtual trade shows in Thailand this coming year. She'd appreciate learning more.
Yes, we at the embassy have been in discussion with Bangkok to see the possibility of, for example, organizing virtual presentations on various aspects of the country. For example, we were talking about having a virtual briefing maybe once a month, focusing on various aspects of the Eastern Economic Corridor. I mentioned that the Eastern Economic Corridor has targeted 12 main industries. So we're thinking about having a presentation done on each of those sectors for our US counterparts here and US partners here, and inviting those who are directly responsible in Thailand to provide information to people here virtually. In terms of actual visits, I think that will probably be on hold for quite a while. We normally welcome trade missions from the US every year, and as well as staff deals and co-deals, but all those, of course, have been put on hold for the time being. And hopefully with the vaccine next year, I think people would be more willing to travel. Hopefully next year. At the meantime, we'll do something virtually.
Okay, thank you, Excellency. Next question. Someone is asking the government's view, Thailand's view about potentially joining the Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, as well as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Has Thailand have any ideas on that?
Well, let me start with RCEP first. The RCEP, of course, I think the negotiations of the various chapters have been concluded. it's going through a legal scrub at the moment, and I think that's going according to schedule, and it should be signed at the RCEP summit in Vietnam in November. So that's for RCEP. For the CPTPP, Thailand has expressed interest in looking at the possibility of joining. The government has undertaken various studies on the benefits as well as the challenges of joining CPTPP. And it's also attracted a lot of support from the private sector in Thailand. But at the same time, there are a lot of issues which are a challenge for us, and a lot of our civil society organizations and NGOs have expressed concerns on certain aspects, such as things like IP protection, medical patents, as well as the protection of traditional medicine and herbs in Thailand. These issues are not new. If you look back when Thailand was negotiating an FTA with the United States back in 2003, 2004, these were some of the issues which were, that were quite a challenge for us. So those are the same issues. I think the government is keen to move on this, but they have to hold close discussions and hearings with all the stakeholders to see that we can garner as much support within the country as possible before commencing negotiations with the other members of the CPTPP. As well as we have to identify what sectors of the economy might be affected if we do join the CPTPP, and what we can do to help alleviate any repercussions that they might have to bear. So we hope to finalize the study on the CPTPP hopefully by the end of this year, and we hope to be able to make an announcement by then. But in terms of the RCEP, that's proceeding on course.
Our next question is there any trade legislation pending in the US House or Senate that you've been following that could affect both countries?
I had alluded to the reauthorization of the GSP, which is something which I said is important for Thailand. We, in fact, are the largest beneficiary of GSP program here in the US, and around $4.4 billion worth of our exports benefit from GSP, which is important for a lot of our SMEs in the country who benefit from this, and we have been receiving support from US importers as well. So we're following that closely and hope that GSP will be reauthorized and that Thailand will continue to be a beneficiary. So that is the main issue on the Hill that we're following at the moment. Others we're following more generally, issues which, of course, a lot of senators and congressmen have been in discussion with us, include things like continuing our cooperation on handling trafficking persons, where we're working closely with the Department of State and various agencies to see what we can do there. Other issues, I think, are in terms of trade, not so much. I think the GSP would probably have to be the main issue on the Hill, which is, I think, not specific to Thailand, and we're hopeful that, of course, the GSP will be reauthorized.
Thank you, Excellency. Next question comes from Jose Ladonio, representing Abbott Laboratories. Can you speak to the reported cabinet reshuffle in Thailand, and how will the reshuffle impact the healthcare space? And would it affect Thailand's efforts in combating COVID and mitigating the effects of the virus?
Yes, there has been news reports of an imminent, if you will, cabinet reshuffle. The expectation, of course, is that the Prime Minister will have to change some positions because some ministers have reportedly resigned their portfolios. So he'll have to engage in discussions with the coalition partners in the government to see what portfolios will remain the same and what portfolios we will see new ministers. So presumably that would happen over the next month. But in terms of public health sector, the public health sector in Thailand is strong because of the officials of the Ministry of Public Health, and they are the ones who have taken the lead in the fight against coronavirus. And if you follow the situation in Thailand, you will see that the key decisions made on coronavirus in terms of the public health sector was undertaken by the public health sector, by the civil servants there, the doctors there, who very much focus on evidence-based decision making. So I think, irrespective of the current cabinet reshuffle, this will continue, and the Prime Minister has full confidence in the medical teams, in the Ministry of Public Health, that they will continue to do what is necessary based on scientific evidence.
Pardon me. Our next question is from Marilyn Brody. Her comment is, as a real estate advisor to many international organizations who are rethinking their footprint, do you have any plans to change the embassy footprint or the residence in DC?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
We're very happy with the embassy at the moment. We're located on Wisconsin Avenue in Georgetown. We've been here for about maybe almost 30 years, and we have a few other properties in Washington which we're continuing to upgrade and renovate. So we're very happy at the moment.
Excellency, I have been to that embassy, and if there's any chance of you selling that embassy, I would like to be the first to put it in a bid so I can raise the necessary funds for that beautiful embassy on Wisconsin.
It is beautiful.
The last question for this afternoon deals with, assuming we do get back to the point of normal travel between the two countries. Right before the pandemic happened, there was a lot of movement in terms of expanding air services between countries in Asia and the United States. My home country, the Philippines, was expanding into Seattle and possibly into Chicago. I know we heard that Vietnam Airlines was looking into possibly flying into Los Angeles. Thai Airways is one of the most phenomenal airlines out there, really first class, even for economy. And therefore, with the new aircraft that is capable of traveling literally halfway around the world without refueling, were there any original plans to expand Thai Airways' presence in the United States beyond, I believe it was only Los Angeles and maybe a couple of other cities on the West Coast? I don't believe it flies into New York City and definitely not Washington, D.C. But there was talk of, especially with Cathay Pacific now flying into Washington, were there any plans to expand the route system of Thai Airways?
You know, Thai Airways used to fly direct services between Bangkok and New York and Bangkok and Los Angeles. This was around 2006, 2007. At that time, we used the Airbus A340-500 four-engine aircraft, and I guess it came about at the wrong time, just when fuel prices were up, and it proved uneconomical. That's why they stopped flying to the United States. At the moment, Thai International is in a bit of a spot itself. They're trying to reorganize the airline itself. And I think that in the foreseeable future, it will probably concentrate more on the European, Middle East, and the East Asian markets before venturing back to the United States. So I think it'll be quite a while before you see Thai International flying in the US skies.
Thank you, Excellency. Andrew, do you have any other final questions for the ambassador?
I don't, not at this time.
Before we will go ahead and conclude the program. First of all, thank you, Excellency, for joining us this afternoon and taking some of your extremely valuable time to join us in this first inaugural virtual program on trade with the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group and the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C. We hope to continue to work with you and your staff moving forward on making sure that your presence in Washington continues to be robust and very well established. I know Thailand is a very popular country in the United States, and I know you don't need a lot of help, but nevertheless, if we can help you open some doors in both public and private sector, we're here for you, and we look forward to working with your embassy in many ways. We want to thank your staff for helping secure your time, as well as organizing the necessary technological links among all of us. And so we wish them extremely profound thanks and extreme gratitude for working with us in this endeavor. And I think the only other thing I will say is we look forward for all those of you who have attended. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon and joining the ambassador and listening to his perspective on U.S.-Thai relations. We hope to have other events down the road. We will have other events down the road, and you should see the invitations here pretty soon. And we also welcome the Embassy of Thailand to participate in those virtual webinars as well, culminating hopefully some great events going into next year. So Andrew, anything else from your end that you wish to say before we conclude?
No, I'd just like to thank the ambassador for his very eloquent remarks, and appreciate you and your partnership today, Nelson, as well.
Thank you. And with that, everybody, thank you again for joining, and we wish you a safe and productive rest of July, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.